YouTube squad, what is up? Hope everybody's doing well. It is a very strange day where I live. A lot of interesting stuff in the sky. I'm gonna avoid going into detail about any of that because I like not being shadow banned. Um, I think if you know, you know. So there's really no use in me going down that rabbit hole. If you guys want to go down rabbit holes, the internet's full of them. You can eat your heart out. Uh, but I'm doing my best. Doing my best to keep the vibe high despite the weird stuff in the sky. Um, hey, that rhymed. All right. So in any case, your boy is dealing with a mild injury again. If y'all, I don't know if you've been subscribed here for a minute, but I had a pretty serious knee surgery. It's been almost 5 months now. They told me I'd never be the same. They said I'd never go back to my sport like I used to. I'd never be competitive in my sport again. Um, not only did I already prove that not true, but they said if you do get back to a level like that, it's going to take about a year. Well, it took about 3 months for me to get back to 100%. And so this is part of why I don't. I take everything doctors say with a grain of salt. I'll put it that way. Sometimes they're right, but a lot of times they're wrong. Just because they have a degree and a fancy coat in an office doesn't mean that they know more than you or the human body or God himself knows. Okay, a lot of these people like to. Anyways, that's not the point of the video. I've got a mild injury right now. I tore my rhomboid. It hurts. It hurts pretty good. It hurts so bad. I could hardly get out of bed yesterday. Actually, I thought something maybe very serious was going on. So I actually went to the ER and got some x-rays just to rule out any spinal or skeletal issues. So it turns out I just tore a muscle, which hurts a lot, but it's okay. I'm gonna be fine. It's just annoying. But there's a lesson contained in this, and hence why I'm making this video. So the lesson here, you guys, and this is the topic. This is segueing me into the topic of this video. I want to talk about spirits. Okay, we talk a lot about spiritual warfare. It's very real. Okay, if you know, you know. Once you come to an awareness of these things, once you learn to see these things, you really can't go back. You can't unsee it. Once you know, and there's really no going back. And nothing is ever quite the same once you realize what's really going on here. And it's not to say that I know personally exactly what's really going on here. There remains a enormous element of mystery. And I thank God for that, because look, if we knew everything, we'd get bored. So this mystery that's inherent in the design is part of the design as far as I'm concerned. It's a beautiful, perfect thing, and we should all be humbled by it and stand in reverence at what God has created, and also stand in shock and awe at what his adversaries have done to imitate and infiltrate and pervert and invert everything about it. Hence the war, hence the ongoing spiritual war. So we're told in scripture that we do not fight against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, essentially saying that what we're up against are spiritual forces of wickedness. It's not necessarily the person. It's not the host. It's the disembodied spirit that animates the host. That's what we're up against. So that's why we were taught to forgive individuals, to love our neighbors, to turn the other cheek, right? This is where that fits in, because we understand we cannot necessarily blame the individual. The individual, in most cases, is being used, operated by spirits. Wow, I just saw a huge hawk. Sorry, I'm distracted right now. They don't normally come this close. Okay, so spirits. What spirits are motivating us in life? This is a question we need to ask ourselves. And this is also part of the discernment process. As we grow in discernment, this is something that we need to be able to discern in others, is what spirits motivate them. And this helps us decide who is and isn't worth our energy and our time. It helps us decide, let's say, like, what jobs are good for us, what work environments, what living environments, what friendships, what relationships, which environments are best suited for our well-being. And we're able to discern this because we're able to discern on an energetic level what type of spirits people are being motivated by, animated by. So some people are mostly themselves, what I would call the main consciousness, their true essence, the part of them that God created, the part of them that is not temporary and that is not physical. A lot of people are mostly informed by that true essence. But a lot of these people also have other influences. Other spirits can come in, like the spirit of anger, the spirit of resentment, the spirit of jealousy, the spirit of rage, the spirit of fear, etc. I would consider all of these things spirits. And then to be more literal with it, it could be the spirit of the agave plant when we drink tequila. It could be the spirit of the rye plant when we drink bourbon, right? Not that I drink these things. I don't do this anymore. I used to. But they call them spirits. And you've noticed, I'm sure you've noticed, if somebody drinks enough of any of these spirits, they start to act different. They talk different. They might even start to believe and think different. This is the power of a spirit over a body. Think about it. We are spirits and bodies. Ideally, that spirit is holy. Ideally, that spirit is in direct communion with our Creator, the holiest of holies. And so now we are embodying a holiness, a righteousness, a certain kind of light. That's our true essence. And if we're motivated by that, we're going to experience the fruits of that, the fruits of the Spirit. We're going to experience more peace and harmony in our lives. Maybe we have a smaller circle, but the circle we do have is much tighter and more meaningful. Maybe you have less friends, but the friends you do have are true friends. This is how it gets, Maybe you're pushed into a period of isolation so that you can hear the voice of God more clearly. So that when you go back out into the world, out of that isolation period, you're now informed by something much higher than anything that society ever conditioned you or programmed you with. Or not even just society, but it could have been family members, significant others, groups of friends, pop culture. It could be the music you listen to. Who knows? If we don't take distance away from these things, though, we don't really know what kind of impact they might be having on us. So these spirits can enter us so many different ways. And the obvious ways are drugs and alcohol. You ingest something and it changes the way you think and feel and act. So that's very obvious. Less obvious is, the music you listen to. And you guys can test this on yourself. Now, if you haven't already noticed, if I get in my car and drive down the street and I throw on like certain rap music, I tend to feel my ego more. I feel more egotistical. I lean back in my seat and I'm kind of feeling myself and I'm like feeling like a badass. And I'm like, yeah, someone talk some shit. Go ahead. See what happens. Right. If I throw on some heavy metal, similar vibe, but in a different way. Maybe I'm not leaning back in my seat. Maybe I'm leaning forward in my seat and I'm really looking for a fight now. Or I could put on Indian classical music and all of a sudden I feel very relaxed and inclined to think about spiritual things. Or I could put on some Bach or some Beethoven, and next thing I know, I'm like, I kind of want to go to the coffee shop and read some philosophy, do something for my brain. Music is vibration. It affects us. I throw Bob Marley on, I just want to hug everybody and love everybody and be in the sun, Marley's got very pure vibration in it, but some of this other music, you guys, you got to be very discerning because the music might be really good. It might slap, but it low key has vibrations in it that might allow certain spirits to enter you and affect the way you think and operate in the world. So I'm very careful personally with like rap in particular. I'm a huge hip hop fan, always have been, always will be. I make hip hop and I do some rapping myself. It's something it's an art form that I have a lot of reverence for, but at the same time, uh, I can see how much this art form has been used for negative reasons. And if you listen to the lyrics and the vibrations coming out of some of this stuff, man, it's hard. It's hard for me to get down anymore. Like just for example, one of my all-time favorite rappers and musicians in general is Mac Miller. But certain things going on in certain songs, man, if I really put my discernment on, I'm like, dude, I can't really get behind this. Like, this is glorifying drug use. This is glorifying casual sex. This is glorifying idolatry. Yeah, the beat is incredibly dope. This guy's an amazing rapper. A lot of talent involved here, but the energy of it will put me in a space where I'm more likely to be in my lust, to be in vanity, to be in pride. It sort of pushes you in the direction of those things. And when you move in that direction, those spirits now can start to mess with you. So that's just another example. Then some really extreme examples, you guys, are the stuff that people, the witchcraft, the stuff that's just become normal. You go to Barnes and Noble, right next to the children's section, there's books on witchcraft, how to cast spells, Ouija boards. This is playing with fire. People don't realize, man, there's still people that think this stuff is cute. They don't think it's real. It reminds me of that old phrase, like the greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince you that he didn't exist, right? These are people that don't believe that this stuff is real. And they're playing with fire, man. Getting into Ouija, getting into divination, conjuring spirits. By the way, you can use music and sex and drugs and all of these things. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. Why is that a thing? This all stems back to Aleister Crowley, if you do your research, and that goes way back to ancient Sumeria, Mesopotamia, the gods Moloch, and I mean this is a whole other rabbit hole you guys can go down if you haven't already. But in any case, this stuff is very real, and these people are playing with spiritual technologies, and they're inviting some of these spirits, some of these negative spirits, and basically forming alliances with them for certain favors, but it comes at an enormous cost. So these things are real, but then also there's the spirit of forgiveness, the spirit of benevolence, the spirit of goodwill, the spirit of reverence, right? And these are spirits that we do want to embody. These are extensions of the Holy Spirit. These are fruits of the Holy Spirit. And so as spiritual cultivators, as people on a spiritual path, our discernment is really everything. If we can't discern one spirit from another, and if we can't discern right from wrong, righteous from unrighteous, holy from unholy, if we can't discern these things, then we are basically just hosts for spiritual parasites and disembodied negative, malevolent, and it's only the malevolent ones. It's only the ill-intentioned ones that would see you, that would find a weakness in you and then exploit it. If you think about it, if you're a benevolent spirit, if you're benevolent, you want the best for everybody, for all sentient life, you're not going to interfere with somebody's process like that. You're going to have a much more gentle way of maybe suggesting that a person move in the right direction, but you're not going to force anything. You're not going to hop on and be a parasite, right? That's what the dark entities do. So that's why we, as warriors in this spiritual war, have to be on point. We have to be sober-minded. We have to be physically, mentally, and spiritually fit all at the same time. And otherwise, we're subject to all sorts of strange attacks and influences, and things can get really weird real quick if we aren't careful. So, naturally, you guys, retainers, celibates, this is a huge reason why we do what we do, because we understand that women are susceptible to all of these forces, these spirits, these influences. Sometimes these spirits have an easier time accessing a woman than a man for whatever reason. We see this demonstrated in the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis, where the serpent beguiles Eve to get to Adam. Ultimately, they're both deceived. But the serpent's strategy was, well, instead of getting directly to Adam, I'm going to get through to him through Eve, right? And this, of course, the way I interpret this is not, some people would say, well, that's because Eve is the weaker vessel. I don't see it that way. I don't see a weaker vessel. I just see that the serpent is very intelligent and cunning and clever. And the serpent understands that women are slightly more of on the emotional side of things, whereas men are slightly more on the rational, logical side of things. It's just generally speaking. Of course, there's exceptions. But speaking very generally, the feminine principle is more about emotion. The masculine principle is more about rational, analytical thinking. Women tend to think more based off of emotion, right? So just because of that, it's easier to manipulate somebody who is basing their thought processes off of feelings, because you can exploit them on an emotional level and then get them to do things. Whereas somebody who is able to compartmentalize those emotions out of the way and think rationally and logically is going to be harder to manipulate. You could still do it. You're just going to have to try a little harder, right? So this is how I interpret this. This is why as men, we need to be very weary and discerning when it comes to women, and it's not women's fault. We need to be very clear about this. This isn't to say women are weaker or that they're bad or anything like that. It's nothing like that. Women are amazing. They're divine. They're beautiful. I love women. Could go on and on. In fact, part of the reason I'm on retention is because I love women a little too much, if you know what I'm saying. So it's not women. It's the spirit of darkness, the adversary, the deceiver, and his cunning ability and willingness to exploit any weakness he can find in anybody. And he knows if a man is driven by his sexual urges and that a woman is driven by emotional urges, and he wants to gain control over both of them, well, then he'll exploit the woman's emotionality and then use her to exploit the man's sensuality. And of course, this could go either way. This could go in either direction. There are exceptions to this rule. But in general, generally speaking, that's kind of how it works. So that's why as men, if we can overcome, no pun intended, our urge to come, if that becomes something that we no longer require at all, we are now empowered. We're now empowered to make decisions on a much more logical level, which makes us harder to manipulate, which is part of why we're able to now discern what's going on a little bit better with the opposite sex, and how some of them, either consciously or unconsciously, have an agenda to control us, essentially. So there's that. This video went on longer than I expected it to, as they always do. So love you guys. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it grooving. All right.